Welcome back to the show, and now we're getting into our Candyman review. And to start with the overview, this is a supernatural horror film written and directed by Bernard Rose and starring Virginia Madsen, Tony Todd, Xander Berkeley, Kasi Lemmons, and Vanessa E. Williams. The film follows a Chicago graduate student completing a thesis on urban legends and folklore, which leads her to the legend of Candyman. It had a budget of 8 to 9 million, brought in 25.8 million to the box office. Also had a 79% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And we were originally supposed to record this the week of Halloween. It was on. I was telling you, like when I saw it, I was like, oh man, I got to talk about the original. But how did you feel about a movie that obviously had it was extremely chilling, horrific, but also had an interesting premise?
I can't remember what age I watched this movie at, but I remember being terrified because it was bees, and I'm really not a fan of bees or hornets. And then he had a hook. I'm not a fan of
Like,
a person that have
nah,
one
I'm good.
hand. Like why are we watching this? And then I couldn't remember why all that happened. I think it was like back in the old times or something. Was it racial?
I think so.
Yeah, it was
Because
racial
there
or
was a lot of
something.
racial elements
Yeah,
around
so
there.
it was interesting. Yeah, but as a kid, I didn't understand that part. I wasn't cared about that part. I was cared about like, why is this black dude coming with all these bees and a hook? But I mean, you could tell the difference, like the evolution of film, because you watch this movie and it's so old. The shots are just
It feels
like,
90s. It feels
yeah, it
very
was real
90s.
old. Cameras was not like as obviously 4K or crystal clear like we have now. So there's a big difference. But outside of that, I thought as a kid, man, this is very terrifying. And this is, you have to have this in your top 10 of horror movies of all time. Has to be. So,
It's
and
yeah,
then,
it's up there. It's in that
yeah,
list. Like we have to mention, like it is in that list of like if you're gonna mention a horror film, you have to mention this. Like, do you
yeah.
think that is why? Because like even today, I hear people mentioning it just out of jokes. Do you think when you have that like cachet and just that that tagline, what about it do you think kind of makes it that movie that people even still have to like mention in 2023?
I mean, with horror films, it's all about like one liners, Chucky, you remember Chucky,
Oh
because
yeah,
of even Jack Nissicle, here's Johnny. You remember that because of like the one liners and things that are going on in the film and the horror or, suspense film. So I think it's the one liners, is I think the overall synopsis from the film, because he's a guy who is a lot of bees, half a hand, killing people, don't care who it is. So but I think the one-liners that do it because Candyman, Candyman. It's like you remember that, especially as a kid, like Candyman or Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
yeah,
Like repetition and just one word
sticks in
repeated.
your
That's
head.
easy. It sticks in your
Yeah,
head. So I think that plays a role into having this film, being a top 10 and people remembering it.
yeah, for sure. From 1 to 4 star, getting to our first top from 1 to 4 stars, what would you give it? I would go with 4 because I mean it fulfills a lot of the requirements that are necessary for a traditional horror film. And
Yeah.
Madsen, she's just a very strong, willed, sympathetic lead, and the plot has narratives that really they're not finished until like the end of the movie, till you see that last scene about her turning into the new Candyman. And I think
Yeah.
it perfectly interweaves the plot and just the suspense. It really is a traditional horror film and what you expect in a
Mhm.
horror movie. From 1 to 4 stars, what would you give it?
I'll give it a 3.5, and I'm glad you said traditional horror films because we don't see traditional horror films unless it's there like a remake or something like that.
Like Get
Because
Out is considered a horror film,
yeah,
but it's
horror
different.
film, but it's
Yeah,
different. What was the other one? With
that Jordan Peele made.
Lupita. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
Us.
Us.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
another horror film, and then the one we had with Kiki
Can't,
Palmer. Them,
yeah.
I still don't
Nope.
understand that movie till this day. Nope. So I'm glad you said traditional horror film, and this is definitely traditional from front to back. How it was shot, the sequences, the blood, all this stuff. It was very traditional. I give it a 3.5 because even in the '90s, I thought
I do
I'm
know
not.
you're gonna nitpick it with the how it
Yeah,
was shot. Yeah,
what 4 stars? Just give it 4 stars. It was the '90s. It's a traditional. I mean, you can't go against a traditional horror film. Like we
yeah.
have a bunch of them. Freddy Cougar, Jason, um, Chucky, Candyman, even freaking Beetlejuice. I was
Oh.
like, Beetlejuice even scared me a little bit as a kid. Beetlejuice was and a crazy dude come with bad makeup on, like it's just crazy. Yeah,
Man.
so yeah, but nah, 4 stars. They don't need to nitpick a movie from the '90s, a traditional horror film.
And now getting into a favorite character, I would go with Helen because as the protagonist, it was really fascinating to see her progression from the one who was chasing the Candyman in the story to actually becoming the villain that she was originally trying to discover everything about. Who overall in this film was your particular favorite character? Because I know it kind of narrowed. This is a narrowed
Yeah.
down film. It's not like a huge cast. You got a few people in it that are kind of the main focus.
Oh, Anne Marie McCoy. And I'm glad she was in the remake as well. So it
Yeah.
kind of tied in together. But I liked her character because she was real. She was real. And I'm gonna get to what one of her favorite sayings is what I'm going to say. But I thought she was a real character. I think she portrayed like a real black person in a horror
Oh
film.
yeah, for sure.
But I thought her character was well needed because it was that realistic factor. Because obviously this is low key made up. It could be possibly like a serial killer vibe if we looked at it realistically. But I
Yeah.
thought her character was needed. Obviously, I wanted to go. Well, Helen was a good character because obviously she's the main character. And then as a kid, I didn't know the plot was going to twist. She's going to come the new Candyman. I was like, what? She came to do Candyman? How? This is crazy. But no, out of there, and then obviously the Candyman himself, I
Yeah.
thought was a good character. But I went with Anne Marie because I think her character is realistic and it placed that realistic factor within this film. So you always got to have that realistic factor, especially and she was a real black person. Because I would have said white people only come around here to cause trouble.
Yeah. 5-0, 5-0.
Right, exactly.
And before we move on, it's interesting because there were sequels to this film, but none of them match the original. Like
No.
when you have horror film sequels and they can't get back to that, like we always say in entertainment, there's that feeling of like, oh man, this was the peak, this was the pinnacle for an athlete, an artist, and they just can't get back to that. Like, what do you think was so difficult for them to like kind of, even with the sequels, get back to the original feel? Because it's like you said, this is a top 10 horror film, and they never reached the heights of it again with the sequels.
Because it was ahead of his time, or it was right in the time of
Yeah,
because the
perfect
'90s,
sweet spot.
yeah, produced a lot of horror films that we still like. I think Scream came in the '90s.
Yeah,
Obviously, all these like Chucky and Freddy Krueger and all these other stuff. So it was a right time for horror films. Now it's like people are not really doing horror films, really. Besides, I mean, Peel. To be
yeah.
honest with you, I haven't
He's
like
kind of the anomaly. He's the anomaly
right.
right now.
And then Scream, I mean, they keep remaking Scream and then they keep remaking the Jason film
Yeah,
because
y'all
nobody
gotta
can
chill.
come up, yeah, nobody can come up with an original horror film outside of Peel. I haven't seen it. So them trying to remake these it loses its luster because it's hard to adaptate or create and expand something that was in the right niche in the right time.
Mm. Oh yeah,
And that's with
perfect,
any
perfect
film. Yeah.
moment, perfect
It's
moment
in
for
it's any film. They need to stop making Terminator. Like after Terminator like 4 or 5. Okay, bro. Like
it.
Matrix had a
So hey, we're
good
good. We good after 4.
yeah, bro. At some point you gotta realize, okay, we gotta stop making these films. I know we're making a lot of money, but we're taking away from the originality of what was there before, even Fast and
Fast
Furious.
15, Fast
Yes.
15.
Telling you, bro. They gonna
I remember like when it first came out, it was like, oh, this is dope. Like the first few,
yeah.
everybody liked it. Then it was just like, hey,
It was
we're gonna
different.
stop. We're gonna stop at some point. Like,
Like they're defying gravity at this point, guys. At this point, they're superheroes.
as Vin Diesel said, I don't have friends. God
I
damn
have, I have family.
it. All right,
Okay, sir.
go away with the series and your family.
Please. I know y'all making a lot of money, but y'all taking from the originality of what
Yeah,
people love
I love the
about
first two,
Fast and
man.
Furious.
Man,
And it's the same thing. Get goodness, dude. For all the dogs sponsored.
for all the
Okay.
dogs, sponsored by OVO. Appreciate you.
And what we mean by that, my dog is keep interrupting me. It's
That's
like
what
a
we mean.
child. Yeah.
It's been an ongoing
So
joke since the
yeah.
beginning.
For all the dogs. Yeah. But no, bro. To be able to keep the originality of these horror films that they keep coming out, it's hard to do because again, they were in the right niche time of creating horror films in the '90s. And you keep doing that, it loses luster the more you create from that originality.
For sure. And now getting into most memorable scenes, I have the Candyman urban legend. Also, Helen meets Candyman. Do you believe in me? Mirror scene, the death of Bernadette. psychiatric death scene, burning the Candyman, and finally Helen is the new Candyman. To you particularly, what were, because I was the burning, that was a one that stood out a lot. The mirror scene. What would to you be the most memorable one?
When Helen became
Oh
Candyman,
yeah, that's
was
the
not
switch.
expecting that as a kid, bro.
Yeah.
Like this whole time, they set it up for us to know who Candyman was, why he was Candyman, all this stuff, who he was killing, who he was going after, blah 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 blah. To turn around to give it to the main character. I think in horror films, I don't think anybody expected that to happen.
Oh no.
I didn't. I didn't expect them to. Sorry
That
for all
was
for all the dogs sponsored by
Hey,
Olivia.
40 Noel. We're sorry this wasn't a smooth recording. We'll chop it. But that was so unexpected because it's like even rewatching it again when it came on, I was like, man, this is having that be the ending. And even like especially when you're a kid, you're not expecting to see that. You're like,
No,
oh, they're gonna like beat the bad guy and everything's gonna be good. It's like, no, she's gonna turn into what she's actually
yes,
chasing. And I think that's was really the originality of the movie and why
yes,
people, fell in love with it so much.
because yeah, that's never been done in a horror film before. Even in like the old school films, you don't get that in that
Yeah.
storyline. But yeah,
First time listeners, this has never happened before. Like they didn't do this in a
no,
horror movie.
no, ever.
Yeah. And now getting into most of my quotes, I had "I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom"
That's a
from
good
Candy.
one.
That is like the
That's a good
tagline.
one.
Like that's the one where
Yes,
you're like,
bro.
when you think about Candyman, you think about that quote. Also, as for our deaths, there's nothing to fear. Our names will be written on 1,000 walls. Have you ever heard of Candyman from Clara? I can't say nothing, or Candyman will get me from Jake. They are the self-conscious reflection of the fears of urban society from Trevor. And then finally, what do the good know except what the bad teach them by their excesses?
Oh, that's a good one too.
To you overall, what were some of your memorable quotes?
Obviously, again, if you listen to this podcast, I always give Wellington his flowers. He always picked the best ones, and then I have to find the scraps. True statement. True statement. Wellington's
OVO, that's
so.
not true. That's not true. I'm a fair quote.
No, but that's a good thing. You find the good ones, so I don't have to, and I can be the do the funny ones or just the weird ones, and this is no exception. So, Anne-Marie McCoy, white people never come around here except to cause us some trouble. I think that is one of the realest lines in any
Real.
movie,
Savon brings the real quote.
bro. And as a kid, we don't expect that in a horror film. You don't expect this in a horror film to be that realistic because it started with racial tension, and that's how you came
Right.
Candyman. And now people want to come around in newspapers, ask all these questions. Oh, y'all want to know about a gang bang or blah, 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 blah. No, I want to know about Candyman. So I thought it was a realistic factor, but obviously that's not the best one, the most memorable one. Wellington already said all of them. So here I am with the scraps. Savon's Corner. Thank you for
Savon's Corner. Sponsored by
OVO Sound Radio for all the dogs.
And now get into what did you like the most about the storyline? To me, just how it imperfect, because there were a lot of social issues in this film that they were covering. There was like obviously the fear of police and them actually investigating Candyman, and then when Helen comes in, people not trusting her obviously because they're like, what's your agenda? What's your motive there? Especially in Chicago, this is a storied legendary tale, and many people have kind of like focused on the social aspects of it, and it has the perfect balance between mystery and gore. It checks boxes in so many different in horror categories. To you, what particular element of this storyline did you kind of like the most?
So what I liked the most about the storyline was that the person who's chasing this the entire time, became what she was chasing.
That is it. That literally is it right there.
Oh, you want it? Oh, you gonna find
it. You got it. You're gonna become it.
Yeah, and that's what she did. I think we don't like.
That's where curiosity kills you. Curiosity can really kill you.
Yes, and it led you down this road because you want to know the truth. You want all this stuff, and now you got into something you weren't even ready for. Now you only got one hand. And
you gotta live with it. You gotta live with the hook.
You can't even wipe your booty right.
No verses, just the hook. All right.
Wellington, that was so good. It just like I heard it, but I
was waiting for him.
High quality. High quality. Yeah, that's the best one. That was by far this whole time we did this podcast. That was so good. That was a good point. That was a good one.
I like punchlines, listeners. I'm just gonna say it. I like punchlines. That was a good one. Band clap.
That was a good one.
And get into our last topic. 10 years from now, do you still think it will be watchable and intriguing? Obviously, it has crossed that benchmark in so many aspects.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see, like, from your perspective, when you have viewers that are used to like different horror, like modern horror films, how do you think they would view this film currently if this was the first time that they ever saw it, and just like how do you think the rewatchability would like continue to grow?
I think it should be like you should be in awe because this film before it came out, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was a book. I don't. All of it sprouts from a book. So to be able to put it on the screen and make it to something that will stand the test of time and people want to remake it, I'm pretty sure before Key did it or Appeal did it, that there's a lot of people wanted to remake it, but didn't know how to angle it or go about remaking this film because it's in originality, it's perfect. Oh, yeah. In a horror film, it's a perfect film. So how would you make a perfect film better? So when you look at this film, you look at the originality, the script, from the storyline, from the characters, from the actors, everything is original, right? Perfect timing. What you said, a traditional horror film. How can you make that better? So when you watch this, you should be in awe of how something was perfect the first time, and that it's hard to remake something that perfect. Yeah. So now it makes you seem as a movie connoisseur. If they have 3 remakes and it wasn't hard to remake it, how perfect is that first film? So this film is perfect, and it took how many years to remake it? And I'm sure there was a lot of people that wanted to remake it. Yeah. So you look at The Matrix, you look at Terminator, you look at Fast and Furious.
I was about to say franchises that like Godfather, Dark, the Dark Knight. Like when you can improve, when a sequel can actually improve, that's a testament. That's really an accomplishment.
Yeah, but if you have a hard time kind of trying to perfect something that's already perfected, it's not going to get done because it's already perfected. So then that makes you think, like, man, was Fast Furious, the first one, really a good movie? Was it really hard to write the second one? Was Terminator really hard to write? Was Harry Potter really hard to write the second one? So we just look at those, and this, a horror film at that, so perfect that it took years to try to make a remake.
Yeah.
Flowers. Bouquet.
Flower. Bouquet. OVO Sound Radio.
For all the dogs.
More tunes for your head top. More tunes for you.
Man, oh my.
Man, we gotta get it. Well, that wraps it up for today. I'm your host, Wellington and Savon. My counterpart, Savon Morris. This has been Full Scope. See you later.